So, in ancient times, there was once a global culture, and this global culture was a manifestation of the human mind delving deep into nature and experiencing reality to the utmost because we didn't have all of the modern societal structures to act as a buffer between us and it. And in this global culture, you find symbolism, which is one of the greatest universal building tools. And one of the primary universal building tools or symbols was the circle and the dot, or what we would call today the circumpunct. So the circumpunct is a circle with a dot in the middle, and it's a mathematical symbol. In ancient times, it was a symbol for spirituality. And one of the locations that I would like to start with is Mesopotamia. In Mesopotamia, you see the circumpunct or the circle and the dot in the form of the ring and the rod. And in the Burney relief, a Mesopotamian terracotta, meaning that it's earthen baked, so it's made from clay. In Mesopotamia, you find the Burney relief, which is the queen of the night, which is either Ishtar or Aresh Kagau. And Aresh Kagau is the older sister of Ishtar, and they're not sure exactly which one it is actually.
Right.
So it's one of the two. Ishtar is the goddess of descent. She, you might be familiar with her descending through the 7 celestial planes. Very similar to the concept of descent in Hermeticism, descending through the planetary spheres. But anyways, she's depicted as a naked winged goddess with talons as feet, perched upon 2 lions and situated between 2 owls. And in one hand, she has the ring and she has the rod. And this was a symbol of power and authority. And then you also see it in the Code of Hammurabi, Hammurabi being the 6th king of the first dynasty of Babylon. And you see it depicted in the Code of Hammurabi. So anybody that's wanting to inquire about this text, then go research it and you'll find the ring and the rod being mentioned. Then you also see it in the 4th tablet of the Enuma Elish, which is the Babylonian creation epic. And in the 4th tablet, you see the installation of Marduk as king, and he receives the staff or the rod, the throne, and the ring. Once again, it's a symbol of power and authority given from what they would call the gods at the time to the kings to establish them as rulers. And then you also see it in Ahura Mazda in the Zoroastrian culture. You see Ahura Mazda with his winged disc, and you see in his hand a ring, and then below him is a line. And Ahura Mazda in this depiction is supposedly symbolic to the Fravashi and the Urvan, which is the spirit, and the soul, which is also equivalent to the circle and the dot. You also see it in the Egyptian culture or in the Kemetic culture. You see Shin, which is a circle with a line tangent to it. You also see the Shinu, which is what the cartouche evolved from, which is more oval shaped with a line tangent to it. And within it you have hieroglyphs referring to the pharaoh, etc., and their accomplishments. But this symbol was universal. And one more thing, you see it in astrology, the circle and the dot for the sun, and then you also see it as the symbol in alchemy for gold. So I'm going to pass it off to Trent, and he's going to elaborate on this, but this is where we see the circumpunct in a multitude of different forms, and in other cultures as well, but it was a symbol that was used to describe spirituality and someone's dominion over the physical world.
Yeah, and if you look, just kind of think back to chemistry class, whenever you took that in high school or middle school, and you remember how they showed the atom. It was, the nucleus in the center with the electrons whizzing around it. We know that's not exactly how it is today, but there's the symbol again. It's kind of used to teach. And going back to the shin, a tangent line to a circle only touches that circle in one point. So there's your dot where that line touches the circle. And when you have the ring and the rod, just another aspect of the circle and the dot that Jordan brought up, you can think about the rod as, kind of looking at it head on, and well, there's the dot, and then the circle, the circle that's being held, the ring that's being held, right? That's the circle. Another way you can kind of put these two together is the circle, right? If you take the circle and you put the dot on the circumference, and then it starts to travel around the circle, and you flash a light on it, well, the shadow from that dot will be a line just moving up and down, right? So there's the rod again. Mm-hmm. So we can see through math and that's a linear transformation. It's transferring it from circular space to linear space. We can see that this circle and the dot is present. And we also see it in modern physics. We see it right now with nuclear fusion. We see it with the diagram of 192 lasers, all putting the equal and proper pressure on hydrogen in the center, creating helium. Mm-hmm. There's the circle and the dot again. The diagram is showing us. And what happens with nuclear fusion? We get clean energy from that. So that's kind of what's happening nowadays, where we just saw that. And if you're following our post, we posted about it. Another place where I saw it in physics was special relativity with the collapse of the wave function. And to speak about that a little bit, a photon is a wave and a particle, if you haven't heard. Excuse me. So what happens is when you observe it or measure this photon, it's going to collapse from a wave-like structure to a particle, and that's what we say. That is the Copenhagen interpretation. The Copenhagen interpretation is it collapses from a wave, which is described by the Schrodinger equation, Erwin Schrodinger. That is the state of it when it's in a wave, and then when we see it, it's a particle. The Schrodinger equation no longer applies, and that's what Niels Bohr kind of pushed into academia, right? He was the guy that was the proponent for that. Nowadays, we understand that that's not necessarily the case. There's other interpretations. There's the Everett interpretation or the many worlds interpretation, which basically says, hey, if the Schrodinger equation is right, why are we messing with it? That is the math. It's always right with the probability. So why are we throwing it out the window when it collapses to a particle? Maybe what we're seeing is just one aspect of, if the probability is 25%, 50%, 25% to be in these different states, and we see one of those, well, maybe those two other states have to exist somewhere. That's what the equation is telling us. So many worlds, right? They exist in a different world. Shout out to Sean Carroll. He's a big proponent of that, and he teaches about that and lectures about that. So yeah, then that goes into quantum field theory. It goes into how an electron is different than a basketball. We're kind of taught that it's that it's like a basketball, but really that's not what's happening. An electron is kind of distributed throughout space. It's not local like a basketball is. And if you take that Schrodinger equation that explains the electron and you square it, it gives you the probability of where it's going to be. A basketball is always going to be where it is. If you give it some velocity and you tell me how long it's been in flight with that velocity, I can tell you where it's going to be. An electron, you can't do that. That's the differences here. So yeah, that's what we're trying to get across to you, is that we can take these ancient symbols and we can see them now. We see how, as science progresses, these concepts become more and more important in science.